In this video, we're first going to look at powers of powers, and then we're going to look at roots of different algebraic expressions. So first, if we have a squared and we multiply it by itself 4 times, this is the same thing as writing it out like this. So a squared multiplied by itself 4 different times, or a to the power of 4. Now we remember from the previous lesson that when we are multiplying powers together, we just add them. So because these are all a squared, we're just going to go 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2, which is 8. So it's a to the power of 8. Simple enough. Right, what happens if we have a number? So let's say we have 3a to the power of 4, and we're going to square this. Well, it's actually not much different. We do 3 squared, and then we also do a to the 4 squared. Okay, 3 squared is 9. A to the 4 squared, well, that's actually just the same thing as up here, but it's slightly different. But it ends up giving us the same result. So we end up with 9a to the 8. Okay, what about negative numbers? So say you have negative a to the power of 5 squared. Okay, now we remember that this is essentially negative 1 squared, and then we're also timesing it a to the power of 5, and we're squaring that. So 1 squared is just 1 times 1. A negative times a negative is positive, so it's just going to be 1, which we don't bother writing. And then we multiply these two numbers, okay? So with our powers, we multiply them. So we end up with a to the 10, because back here, 2 times 4 is equal to 8, okay? So when you have a power of the power, you multiply. So 4. Let's do something trickier. Let's do a fraction. Okay, so what if we have 1/2 a squared, and let's square this. So we're going to have to do 1/2 times by itself. And we're also going to have to do the a squared, square it again. So what's 1/2 times 1/2? Well, that's a quarter. Okay? And then we have a to the 4. Simple enough? I hope so. Right, now let's start looking at some square roots. So we all know what a square root is. A square root, so let's just define what a square root is. So a square root is where you are finding the numbers that divide evenly. So you're finding a number times by itself that will equal that. So for example, e.g. 36, the square root of 36, well, that's 6, okay? Because 6 times 6 equals 36. So it is very important for the standard that you know what square roots are, and what you need to memorize them, because you do not have a calculator, so you cannot just use a calculator to figure it out. So a key thing to write is the square root of a squared, okay? Well, we've got to remember that a squared is a times a, so the square root of a squared is a, right? That makes sense. Okay, so another way of actually writing a root is like this. So if you have the square root of x, right? The way you find this out, this is also the same as writing x to the power of 1/2. Actually, I might make that a little bit more clear. That's to the power. Okay, so when you're taking the square root, you are actually putting it to the power of 1/2. So if you were to have the third root of a number, okay, it's the same thing as a 1/3. Okay, are you seeing the pattern? I certainly hope so. So let's start doing a few different ones. So I'm going to do 25x to the 8. And we're going to take the square root of this. Okay, so this is the same thing. We can split this up into two different square roots. Like this. So, what's the square root of 25? We know that that's 5. Make that actually look like a 5. Right, and the square root of 1/8. Okay, so we could have 8 divided by 2. So this is the same thing as, this is the same thing as x to the 4. Okay, what about cubed roots? So let's have 27x to the 9. Okay, and we're going to take the third root of that. So 27 is 3 to the power of 3. So that's obviously going to be 3. And then we're going to have x, and we do 9 divided by the 3, so it ends up being 3. Okay, let's do another one. I highly recommend that you remember your powers of 3s and 2s and some of the 5s, because they are the most important ones that you'll need to be able to divide by and use the powers of. So let's do third root of 8x 21. Okay? Right, so the third root of 8, we've got to remember that 8 is 2 times 4. Okay? Which is 2 times 2 times 2. Okay, so 2 cubed. So we're going to have 2 there. And then x, and we do 21 divided by 3, that's 7. Right, so I hope you kind of see the whole idea of it. Sometimes they may want you to do some interesting things first and then do that. So in the book on page 14, you'll see some other problems like this. There is one problem. I'm going to write down something similar. Let's do 4x 8 squared. Okay, there's a problem that's kind of similar to this. Well, you got to also remember that this here is actually being squared. So when you take the square root of this, you can actually just delete the power. So it's just going to end up being this. Because it's no different than saying something like, so saying the square root of 4 squared. Well, what's 4 squared? 4 times 4 is 16. So what's the square root of 16? Well, that's 4, which is what was in your bracket. Okay? So if you have something all in brackets like this, and it's squared, and you're taking the square root, you can just delete the power, and you are left with the answer that is originally in the brackets. Pretty cool. Right, I'll see you next